You can easily see that this is an arithmetic sequence. If you take 10 minus 5, that's 5. 15 minus 10 is 5. The way you find that common difference is you take any term in the sequence and, remember, subtract the previous term for arithmetic, once you realize that you're adding or subtracting to get to the next term. So now that we can see that our D is 5, our common difference is 5. To write a recursive formula for this sequence, remember recursive needs two statements. The first statement says that the first term will be a subscript 1 is how it's notated. The first term is 5 in my sequence. And then the nth term, or any term in the sequence, is the previous term, which we notate by a subscript n minus 1. You always put that in the recursive. And then state what it's adding or subtracting, or what the rule is, what's happening. So we're adding 5 each time. The explicit formula is the nth term is equal to the first term plus that common difference times n minus 1. And so you could substitute into that formula. You could say that the first term was 5 plus the common difference, which is the same thing as the slope of your line, remember, because arithmetic is linear, times n minus 1. And you could just simplify that by distributive property first. So that's going to be 5 plus 5n minus 5. And then if you combine like terms, 5 minus 5 goes to 0, and you're just left with 5n. So 5 times n is your explicit formula. I also showed you a second method to do explicit formula. Remember that you could have said, okay, I know that the slope is 5. I know that the slope is 5, and that goes in front of your n, and then you have to figure out, well, if 5 times n plus or minus, let's leave that blank, you have to figure out the pattern. You know that if n was 1, remember I put a 1 above the 5 up there in the sequence, it's hard because I didn't have room, but if I said, okay, if I put in 1 for n, my first output value in that sequence should be 5. Well, 5 times 1 is already 5, so it is plus 0 equals 5, and so 5n is your formula. So you can figure it out just from the pattern and figuring out what's missing. In the y equals mx plus b formula is basically what we're looking at, or you can use the explicit formula and substitute in. You need to decide which method you like out of those two on the explicit formula before you test. And then what if I said let's find the 100th term? Well, the explicit formula is the one you usually use if you have both of those formulas to find the 100th term, because it's really easy. 100th term means that n is 100. So if n is 100, all I do is take the formula, the explicit formula, it's a direct formula, and say that the 100th term is found by 5 times 100. So the 100th term would be 500 in this sequence, 5 times 100. So later today in the classwork, don't, if I ask you to find the 1000th term or whatever I asked you to find, make sure that you can use the formula. You know you can use the formula instead of writing out the entire sequence.